Back on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight, it is NBA Mock Draft Monday. The draft 2 weeks from Wednesday in Brooklyn at Barclays Center. That is 16 days from now. And right between now and then, in 8 days, Cooper Flagg is going to meet with the Dallas Mavericks, who hold that #1 pick and intend to draft him. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by Adam Finkelstein and Gary Parrish. It's GP's mock today. The article is up at cbssports.com. At #1, Gary, it's obvious it's Cooper Flagg. You're sold that this is a slam dunk pick, so to speak. Why aren't you sold, though, that he is a slam dunk for the top prospect eventually when we look back at this draft in 10 years?
Simply because you never know. I mean, we always think we know heading into these things. Like, there's no way Zion Williamson won't be the best player from his class, and there's no way Greg Oden won't be the best player from his class. The list of such prospects is long, and just careers unfold in different ways. So, to be clear, I would take Cooper Flagg #1 in this draft, regardless of which franchise I was running. He will be and should be the #1 pick in the draft. But after that, we're going to start playing basketball games, and all sorts of things can dictate where a career goes, including injuries. So I only frame it that way just to make it clear nothing is guaranteed, but Cooper Flagg will and should be the #1 pick in this draft.
He's had a lot of expectations to live up to, and he's done it every step of the way, even at Duke, coming out a year early and being the best player in college basketball, talent-wise. At #2, it's the only team with multiple lottery picks, the San Antonio Spurs. The pick here is Dylan Harper, but Gary, you mentioned that this could be a package trade. You think no matter what, though, that Harper's going to go #2?
I think no matter what, he should go #2. Obviously, he's not a great roster fit for San Antonio, given that they have De'Aaron Fox and Stephon Castle, the reigning rookie of the year. Dylan Harper can play with De'Aaron Fox, play behind De'Aaron Fox, but it does get a little jumbled up in that backcourt with, projected elite level guards. But I'm just a big believer at this point in the draft, you always take best player available and you figure it out. If you don't, that is how you end up passing on Michael Jordan in an NBA draft once upon a time. You've already got an all-star guard. Why do you need another one? Because the other one, the next one, might literally be the best player who's ever played the game. I'm not suggesting Dylan Harper is that, or that passing on him would be similar. I'm just saying that most people, myself included, believe he is the second best prospect in this draft. And even if San Antonio keeps the pick, which, like you suggested, isn't crystal clear, they could package it to try to get a veteran, perhaps go big fish shopping for a Giannis Antetokounmpo. But regardless whether the pick is moved or San Antonio executes it, I do believe Dylan Harper comes off the board second.
And I think what fans need to know here is they're looking for some sort of comp to center the context on. Think about somebody like Cade Cunningham, a big initiator, a big lead guard, if you will. Dylan Harper's about 6'6" with a 6'9" wingspan. Now, he's left-handed while Cade is right-handed. He, too, is a somewhat questionable shooter, about 32% from the three-point line last year. But he's got terrific size, terrific strength, and just natural instincts for the game that really help him when he is in attack mode. So think about a left-handed version of Cade Cunningham for those fans who are trying to familiarize themselves with Dylan Harper before draft night.
And at #3 here, the pick for the Philadelphia 76ers is one that might raise some eyebrows because, Gary, this is the first mock I've seen from our experts where Trey Johnson goes here and not Ace Bailey. What's the reasoning?
This is where I do stray from most mocks and perhaps most front offices as well. As always, we'll see in a few Wednesdays. But simply put, I think Trey Johnson's the third best prospect in this draft. And Philadelphia is a little bit like San Antonio in the sense that they could execute this pick or package it with something else to try to bring in a veteran, given where Joel Embiid is at this point in his career. But again, I don't concern myself with roster stuff this high up in the draft. So as soon as I tweet a link to this mock draft every time, somebody reminds me that the Sixers already have Tyrese Maxey and they already have Jared McCain. And do you really want to add another guard? If he's special, the answer is always yes. Trey Johnson's 6'5". He's got good positional size. He's a really good athlete. And he shot 39.7% from three on nearly 7 attempts per game. Ace Bailey is a fascinating prospect with lots of upside. That's who many people have going third in this draft. I'm a VJ Edgecombe fan as well. But when this is all over with, I think Trey Johnson is going to be a top 3 player from this draft, and that means if I'm picking third, I'm taking him.
And Adam, Gary does have VJ Edgecombe going here at 4 to the Hornets and not Ace Bailey. And you have a comp for him that should excite some people because he's a very exciting player.
Yeah, Victor Oladipo is my comp. Think about someone who came up the ranks as an undersized wing, who made his mark with extreme athleticism, and then had his skill set continue to grow in time. We saw that process begin this year for VJ at Baylor. The shooting made a jump, and as the season went on, we saw him take on more ball handling responsibilities in the pick and roll. That's a process that is going to need to continue, though. But in Charlotte, where you're playing with a ball-dominant guard like LaMelo Ball and then a potent wing scorer like Brandon Miller, it's really an ideal scenario because VJ could tap into that defensive upside, which again is similar to Oladipo, and I think one of the most exciting parts about his potential future.
You mentioned the word upside. You have Ace Bailey, Gary, falling to number 5 in the Jazz. Is that a spot where you can see more of an upside for Bailey as opposed to maybe being disappointed by his development last year in college?
That's exactly right. He's a flawed prospect, but one with tremendous potential. And in all honesty, if we are talking about a list of candidates who could in 5 years be a better pro from this draft than Cooper Flagg, you've got to put Ace Bailey on that list because the way he is able to shot create and shot make at his size is unusual. Now, what we have found out once the measurements come in is that he's not as tall as he says or as Rutgers suggested, and so there's not as much length on the wing as we thought throughout January, February, and March. But he is still a wing with good positional size who can really shot create and shot make. The problem is, at this point in his life, he doesn't do much more than that very well, but at 5th in this draft, if you can get a guy who a lot of people have in the top 3, and you're a franchise still in total rebuilding mode, you take best prospect available. And even if I do have some issues with Ace Bailey as a prospect, I have eyeballs. I can see the potential. At 5, I've got to scoop him up.
And most of these guys in the top 5 are guys that we had in the top 1, 2, and 3 in the rankings coming out of high school, so we're not surprised there. But at 6, it's Jeremiah Fears to the Wizards in Gary's mock. And Fink, how does this guy go from not even top 50 in the high school rankings to a top 10 pro in 1 year?
Well, the way he did it was he did it by reclassifying, because at this time last year, the kid was playing on the EYBL, and he continued to play grassroots basketball through the month of July. At that point, he reclassified. In fact, he was even committed to Illinois at one point until about early July, reclassified, committed to Oklahoma, and went there right away. And the other thing I would tell you, Chris, is there is a long history of guards who reclassify up, who fail to live up to expectations. And Fears proved to be the exception to that rule. So that is a huge indicator if you're a believer in his upside. But I'll also tell you, he is still one of the more polarizing prospects in this class. GP has him as high as 6. I've seen other people, myself included, who have him outside the top 10. So there is a wide range of potential outcomes, but the upside is undeniable with his burst, explosiveness, and ability to pressure the rim.
Moving to the New Orleans Pelicans at number 7 in Gary Parrish's mock draft. Future obviously uncertain for Zion Williamson, both on and off the court. Con Knippel, another Duke player. They've tried time and time again with Duke players, Gary. I think this would be the 5th different one to be on the same team as Zion in the NBA.
The thing with Zion just hasn't worked the way any of us anticipated it might in New Orleans. He's constantly been injured, and as you noted, now there are real ugly off-the-court allegations that, put a cloud above his entire career. So who knows where this is headed exactly, but if he is still the centerpiece in New Orleans, as always, the thing you need to do is provide shooting around him. And in Con Knippel, forget that he went to Duke. Just realize that he is arguably the best shooter in this draft. Trey Johnson might have something to say about that, but Knippel was great as Cooper Flagg's sidekick in Durham. And I use that term sidekick as a compliment because he's much more than that. He was a number 2 option at Duke, but he would be the number 1 option on like 99% of other college basketball teams. And when Flagg went down very briefly late in the season, Duke really didn't miss much. And that is because Knippel was capable of stepping into that role and playing or taking on a larger responsibility, particularly on the offensive end. Everybody references his shooting first because it is the elite skill. but he's a well-rounded basketball player, better defender than some realize. Yes, he's an elite shooter, but far more than that, and really just a perfect building block in New Orleans, with or without Zion, but especially with it.
So 2 Duke players in the top 7. Now 3 Duke players in the top 8 as the Nets make their first of 4 first-round picks here in Gary's mock. Think, what's a good comp for Kaman Malawach?
Well, there's a lot of shot blocking, lob threat, rim runners we could go with, but I really think what he does at an extra special level is be that lob threat. I think the shot blocking is more theoretical than it is tangible right now. And DeAndre Jordan, if you can remember what a massive lob threat that guy was, I think that is somebody that fans should think about when they're trying to figure out exactly who Kaman Malawach is going to be. He was Cooper Flagg's favorite lob target. This guy has a 7'6" wingspan, and he will have one of the biggest standing reaches in the NBA from the time he arrives in the association. As I said, the shot blocking is going to continue to develop, but he's mobile. He can run the floor. He's got some versatility in the way he can guard pick and roll for a guy his size. So I think this is an exciting prospect that a lot of teams, Brooklyn included, are potentially excited about.
Brooklyn also has pick number 19, number 26, and number 27 still to come as we recap 1 through 8 here in the mock draft from Gary Parrish. 3 Duke players there, 2 Rutgers players. And up next, the Spurs have their next lottery pick upcoming, and a team like the Rockets, 2nd seed in the West, with a top 10 pick on the way. We are going through Gary Parrish's latest mock draft with just about 2 weeks to go until the NBA draft. I'm Chris Hassel, also joined by Adam Finkelstein. We just had our first center go in Kaman Malawach at 8 to the Nets. Now we are at 9, and Gary, it's another center.
But a very different kind. This is Derek Queen out of Maryland. He's a super skilled big who makes up for whatever physical limitations he might have with a high basketball IQ and a unique ability to just get where he's trying to get. When you're watching it, you can reasonably wonder, like, can he move well enough to bounce it and get at the NBA level where he got at the collegiate level? But some people wondered that about the move from high school to college, and that obviously went remarkably well. He had the buzzer beater in the NCAA tournament against Colorado State that got a lot of attention. He scored 27 points against the eventual national champion Florida in that loss that ended his college career. But he's a fascinating prospect who maybe doesn't look the part the way Kaman Malawach undeniably looks the part. But this is a great basketball player, and I anticipate him having a really nice career.
Rounding out the top 10, the Houston Rockets. They have this pick via the Phoenix Suns after getting a 2 seed in the West and then losing in the opening round in 7 games to the Warriors. The pick is Carter Bryant from Gary Parrish. Fink, what do you think of that?
I love it. I'm as enthusiastic about this pick as I could anyone in the lottery who averaged 6 points and 4 rebounds per game. Reason being is what we know about Houston is that defense is a non-negotiable under Ime Udoka. And Carter Bryant has a chance to be one of, if not the most versatile defender in this class. You watched Arizona last year. You saw him guard all 5 positions on the floor, including point guards at times. He also made huge strides with his shooting. I can tell you the 3-ball was not consistent in high school. When you dig into his catch and shoot numbers last year at Arizona, it was consistent. So we saw a progression there. I can also tell you he's a better passer than he got a chance to show last year. So does he have to continue to develop? Absolutely. But there is a very translatable role as a big 3-and-D wing in the modern NBA for Carter Bryant.
Let's move to the Portland Trailblazers at 11, Gary. It's Jace Richardson, the pick here. How much does his father, Jason, and his positive experience in the NBA and what a good player he was, how much do you think that affects front offices when they're evaluating his son?
It genuinely plays a role. I mean, I've talked to front office members about this. They put real value on the sons of professional athletes. And I don't mean just sons of former NBA players, although that is the case here. I mean, was your dad a professional baseball player? Was your mother a professional basketball player? Did your mother run track in college? Like, all of these things are things that front offices value, and not simply from a genetics perspective. Some of it is just, if you grow up and are raised around excellence, you have a better chance of becoming excellent. Like, you know what it looks like to be a professional. You know what it's like to get up and go to the gym early. than to go back to the gym, That's the life Jace Richardson watched his father live on some level, and it just creates typically, or at least often, really great habits that can benefit somebody throughout their professional career. As you know, I live in Memphis, and the front office here has real value on that. Jaren Jackson Jr., Scottie Pippen Jr. There's some real thought that both of those men became the basketball players and professional athletes that they are because they were raised or in households or were around professional athletes their entire life. And so Jace obviously checks that box. He came off the bench early in his career at Michigan State. An injury ultimately put him into the starting lineup, and he stayed there as a key member of that Michigan State team from that point on. He's a combo guard, and there's some questions about him. He's a little on the smaller side, but he has lottery talent. And to answer your question, absolutely, his father being a longtime veteran is a good sign.
That's 11 straight college one-and-dones to start this mock draft. The first non-one-and-done is a two-and-done, a sophomore and NBA, and it's Colin Murray Boyles to the Chicago Bulls. Fink, what do you think?
I like the fit. Let me tell you this. GP mentioned a moment ago that Derek Queen was a vastly different type of big than Kaman Malawach. Well, Colin Murray Boyles is a vastly different type of big than both of them. And that's what's really interesting about this class, and specifically the big men, is that you have various archetypes. Murray Boyles is an undersized southpaw big. He's not a great shooter yet at this point, but he plays bigger than he is because he's long and strong. He's a terrific rebounder. He can finish and rebound with players who are bigger than him inside. And the other thing he is, and this is vital, is a high processor of the game. So he can play off short rolls, he can play off dribble handoffs, and all those modern offensive actions that NBA playbooks are littered with at this point. So you don't see a whole lot of 6'7", 6'8" undersized fives in the NBA these days, but there's a lot of belief that Colin Murray Boyles will be the exception to that rule.
Let's move to the Atlanta Hawks at 13. And Gary, the pick here from you is Kasparis Yakachunas, who did not shoot as well as some had hoped. He was under 32% from three in college. Is there any hope that he can be a three-point guy in the NBA with those kind of numbers?
Not only is there hope, I think there's evidence in his past that he's a better shooter than that number illustrates. The number's the number, and he'll have to answer for that. But people do not believe this is a 32% shooter for his entire career from the perimeter. He should be better than that. He's not an explosive athlete, but he does have a diverse skill set, high basketball IQ, could theoretically play behind Trae Young in Atlanta, with Trae Young in Atlanta. He not only qualifies as best prospect available at this point in the draft in my head, but also a pretty reasonable fit with the Hawks.
And now we go to the only team that has multiple lottery picks, and it's the San Antonio Spurs. Dylan Harper went number 2 to San Antonio. And Fink, really outside the top two, Cooper Flagg 1, Dylan Harper 2, there hasn't been one pick that has really been universal among our analysts other than this second pick by the Spurs. And it seems like whether it's you, whether it's Gary, whether it's Boone, it's Liam McNeely here. Why does this make so much sense?
You know what's fascinating about that is while there is maybe let's call it groupthink because we're all just so smart, this is considerably higher than most of the industry is predicting that Liam will go. I am a believer in this pick, as you mentioned, Chris. I think Liam is still a lottery caliber talent. Just like GP just said about KJ, I think Liam is a much better shooter than the numbers indicated last year. He also grew an inch as a freshman at UConn. He is a legitimate 6'8" wing. He's a skilled wing. All kinds of winning attributes. He's a competitor. He's got a high basketball IQ. Had to play through a variety of injuries last year with the Huskies, some well documented, others not so much. I think when the teams dig into that, they are going to be able to see well beyond those easy counting stats that people see when they quickly look a player up. And in San Antonio, where floor spacing is going to be absolutely vital around guys like Wemby, De'Aaron Fox, Steph Castle, and maybe Dylan Harper, Liam McNeely will be a very good fit.
All right, so that's how the lottery looks. The Spurs, the only team with multiple lottery picks as of now, but we'll see if teams start to package things up and trade down the board once we get to the draft, which is 2 weeks from Wednesday in Brooklyn. By the way, the Nets will have 3 more picks upcoming in this mock, including next with the number 19 overall pick. Hitting the halfway mark of Gary Parrish's first-round NBA mock draft with the draft 16 days away. I'm Chris Hassel, joined by GP and Adam Finkelstein. Gary, at number 15, it's the Oklahoma City Thunder, who might end up winning an NBA title next week, and it's a very divisive prospect, Yegor Demon out of BYU. Why are some sold and some not sold on him?
Well, the reason some are sold is because, he's 6'8" lead guard, so incredible positional size, great potential, great vision, can really pass it or at least make some tough passes at his size. But the truth is he wasn't a great college player. He was on a really good team and he had his moments, but he turned it over about 3 times a game. That's too high. Shot 27% from 3. That's too low. So if you are going to spend a top 15 pick on this young man, you've got to believe that some of that stuff's going to get cleaned up. The turnovers go down, at least relatively speaking. That three-point percentage has got to come up. But like Fink said earlier with Jeremiah Fears, there's a wide range here. I could see Demon going in the top 10. I could also see him easily falling out of the top 15.
The Thunder also have another pick coming up at 24. As we move on to the Orlando Magic at 16, a team trying to get over the hump. They've been to the playoffs the last 2 years, but they have not yet won a playoff series. And the pick here is Nick Clifford. Fink, this is an older prospect, 5 years of college basketball, which is unlike pretty much anybody that's been taken before him in this mock.
Yeah, he's 23 years old, so the upside is potentially lower than some of the other prospects we've heard, but there's a belief that he could make a contribution sooner rather than later, and that's why it could be appealing for Orlando with their pursuit of trying to win right now. So with Nick Clifford, you have a plus athlete, a very good cutter, very good passer, very good defender, and an outstanding perimeter rebounder. Now, if you are a believer in him, then you are looking at the gains he made in his outside shooting last year in particular and saying that you believe that's going to extend to the NBA arc with that type of consistency. And so you're plugging him into a type of 3-and-D role player. If you're more skeptical about the shooting, then you've got him a little lower on your board than this. But again, there is belief that he could step in and contribute for a spot in the rotation right away as a rookie.
Another player who's been around, weathered, if you will, comes in at number 17 to the Minnesota Timberwolves, Gary. It's Danny Wolf, and I know you're encouraged because you want to see guys excel as they elevate, and he was great in the Ivy League, and he was just as good, if not better, in the Big Ten.
Yeah, it was super impressive because, as you know, we get a lot of quote-unquote mid-major conference players transferring up to the power conferences, and it does not always go smoothly. Sometimes the production falls off considerably, and it just really didn't with Danny Wolf. He's 6'11", averaged 13 points and nearly 10 rebounds a game this season for the Wolverines. Simply put, he's got guard skills and a big man's body, and he's a better than some realize defender. So this is somebody who has the potential, at least, in a world where everybody is looking for bigs who can stretch the floor and keep it spaced. This is somebody who has the potential to do that and do it quite well.
Moving on now to the Washington Wizards, still rebuilding at number 18 overall. The pick from Gary is Asa Newell, Fink. What do you think about his prospects as an NBA player with a lot of talent but maybe not a lot of range?
Well, I think the range is the key variable, right? Because if he shoots, then all of a sudden the upside is going to be higher than most people project. However, there is a role right from day one, even if he doesn't shoot, because he's an athletic big who can be a lob threat, who can run the floor, who's got enough size to play the 4 or 5, and who can guard, pick and roll in a couple of different ways. And in the NBA, that gets you on the court. Now, in Washington in particular, which is in the midst of a significant youth movement where you got someone like Sarr there, Newell's got enough size and physicality where he can really balance out last year's second overall pick. And I think that front court tandem could have a very bright future playing together for the foreseeable future. So I would like this fit in Washington.
Gary puts Newell there along with Jeremiah Fears, who went number 6 overall. Brooklyn Nets coming up with their second of 4 picks. And Gary, it's the first international prospect of this draft.
Nolan Traore from France. He's a 6'4" guard, only 18 years old, and earlier in his career had sort of developed a reputation as an inefficient player. somebody who's not a great shooter, or at least a reliable shooter, but he improved in both areas over the past year. And given that, I a 6'4" point guard as opposed to 6'1", he's got pretty good positional size. And this is somebody who undeniably you're betting on the potential, you're betting on what's to come. He's far from a finished product, but at 18 years old, he's already shown a lot of promise that he can be a high-level guard in this league.
So they add Traore with Kaman Malawach, who was 8th overall, the first 2 of 4 picks for the Nets. As you look at 15 through 19, hitting the 20s next, including the Pacers and the Thunder with draft picks. We are into the 20s in Gary Parrish's mock draft. 2 weeks to go until the NBA draft, 2 weeks from Wednesday. From Brooklyn, Adam Finkelstein is here. I'm Chris Hassel. Adam, at number 20, the pick from GP is Noah Esengu out of France to the Miami Heat, a team that is really in a transition right now, trading away Jimmy Butler and trying to figure out what that future holds. And this is one of the younger players in the draft.
It's one of the younger players in the draft, and it's one of the more athletic prospects in the draft. He excels with his mobility, with his leaping ability, with his court coverage, and I'll tell you what, his skill set is trending up as well. In fact, the intel in recent weeks, and obviously a lot of it is smoke screens at this point in the draft process, but is that he could be a riser. He's still playing in the German Pro League. He's making a clear impact in that postseason, and there's a lot of intel out there that front offices are excited about him. He, too, is a prospect that has a wide range of potential outcomes, but the optimism about just how high his upside could be given his physical gifts is gaining momentum, Chris.
All right, that's at number 20. The Utah Jazz are at 21 in this mock, and Gary, it's somebody who you say may not be ready to play right away in the NBA. My question is, and the pick is Joan Behringer, why would the Jazz want to do that when they really need bodies to throw out there, don't they?
Yes, but more than that, they need people who can develop into high-level NBA players over time. This is not a franchise that's trying to compete for anything of significance next season. And Behringer is a guy who is 6'11" with a 7'4" wingspan, versatile defender, can rim protect. At this point in this mock draft, for me personally, he qualifies as best prospect available. And I recognize the Jazz already have Walker Kessler, but I also know that the Thunder also have Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein. It's not the worst thing in the world to have 2 reliable bigs you can throw out there. And again, Behringer checks the box of somebody who, over time, as he develops, could certainly be that guy.
Jazz got Ace Bailey 5th earlier on in this mock from Gary. Let's go to 22, the Atlanta Hawks. And somebody that I've seen go higher in some of our other expert mocks, it's Cedric Coward. Fink, would you think he's going to be there this late?
Actually, this is about where I have him too, but I think the fact that there's a variance within our mock drafts is representative of the market right now. He's a guy who could be in play as early as the late lottery, and I think there's scenarios where he's around in the late 20s. So there's going to be a lot of anticipation on draft night, but remember, this is a prospect who started playing Division III college basketball. He only played 6 college basketball games last season at Washington State, and initially he committed to Duke out of the transfer portal because he didn't think there would be a first-round market for him whatsoever in this year's NBA draft. That has proven to not be the case. I have every confidence he will be taken in the first round. We're talking about a long wing, a late bloomer who impressed everyone as much off the floor as he did on the floor at the combine. So whether it's 14, whether it's 23, whether it's 27, all of that is very, very good news for a guy who only played 6 games this season.
And the Hawks also had the 13th overall pick, and earlier Gary had them going with Yakachunas out of Illinois. This is an interesting spot here in the draft where we have the Pacers and Thunder back-to-back, the 2 teams that are playing for the NBA championship. Gary, who's your pick for Indiana here at 23?
I've got Thomas Sorber, the one-and-done freshman out of Georgetown. The young man was having a really good and surprisingly good on some level freshman season at Georgetown, averaging 15 points and 9 rebounds. I would sit in studio with my colleague Roy Hibbert, a former Georgetown star, and Roy picked up on Sorba really early and was like, oh, he's going to be the next one to make a lot of money playing basketball. Was averaging 15 and 9, and then a left foot injury suffered in February ended his season. There was some thought that he might return to school, and if he would have, he could have competed for Big East Player of the Year honors. Now he's going to be a first-round pick, and somewhere in the 20s makes sense to me.
That picture of him looks like he's 13 years old there. He's crazy. Let's go to the Thunder now, the team that is favored to win the NBA championship with the series tied at 1. Ben Surratt is the pick. Fink, this is a team that has so much and not a lot of room. Wonder if they even make these picks or trade out. But what do you think of Surratt?
Well, I think he's a big jumbo, in fact, playmaker, 6'6" lefty who's very creative and one of, if not the very best live dribble passers in this entire draft. Now, he's got some questions he's got to answer specifically with the shooting, but with his size, with his playmaking ability, there are high upside outcomes here. Now, to your point, Chris, I think it's very possible that Oklahoma punts some of these picks down the roads, tries to stack future assets, knowing they really don't have spots on the roster this season. But Surratt is a prospect that I think has the ability to play in the NBA next year, and there are numerous teams who would be very interested in having the opportunity to develop him.
All right, so we're 24 picks in. Still no Walter Clayton Jr., the most outstanding player from the NCAA tournament and Final Four from the Florida Gators. Will he be picked? Where might he go? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 picks to go in Gary Parrish's mock. Back on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight, it's Gary Parrish's mock draft in the NBA. Just the first round. I'm Chris Hassel, also joined by Adam Finkelstein. Gary, you had the Orlando Magic picking at 16 earlier with their original pick going old with Nick Clifford, the fifth-year player out of Colorado State. Who do you have them taking here at 25 with their second pick from the Nuggets?
Hugo Gonzalez, a 6'7", 19-year-old from Spain, a 6'7" wing, but one who is more known for what he can theoretically do on the defensive end than what he does on the offensive end right now. He's considered a plus defender with a good motor, and if you've watched these NBA playoffs unfold, you understand that every team at this point in the season, and really at any point in the playoffs, you can't have too many wings with decent size who can switch everything and just become difficult to get to paint touches against. And Gonzalez has a chance to develop into a player like that. To be clear, he's a little ways away from being a contributor in the NBA, but the talent is obvious.
Up next, it's the third pick for the Brooklyn Nets. They have a draft high 4 picks, and they go back to back here, 26 and 27. But at 26 specifically, Fink, it's Will Riley out of Illinois. What do you think of this pick?
I think this is a big swing, and I think if it hits, it'll be a home run, but there's a chance it strikes out. And that's what you get in the late first round, especially given the number of players who chose to return to college basketball this season. Will Riley has terrific positional size, albeit a very lean frame that is not going to be ready for the physicality of the NBA right away. He's got a lot of potential as a shot maker, although the totality of his statistical profile isn't that encouraging based on what we saw last year at Illinois. What was encouraging was the fact that he showed growth playing with the ball in his hand. So if everything goes right, you're talking about a multi-positional perimeter player at 6'8" who can play some pick and roll, who can make shots in bunches when he gets hot, and you just have to compensate him for a little bit on the defensive end of the floor. But as I said a couple of times already, there's a wide range of potential outcomes when it comes to this prospect.
Okay, so Riley, Traore, Malawach, and who's the last pick for the Brooklyn Nets, Gary?
Massim Reynaud out of Stanford. He's a 7'1" center from France, played 4 years for Stanford and improved every single year, which, you don't get an award for that, but that's certainly the type of trajectory you want any basketball player to be on. He's a real stretch 5, so if I've got Malawach going earlier, yeah, we're doubling up on centers here, but dramatically different players. He took 5.5 threes per game in his senior year at Stanford and made roughly 2 of them per contest. It came out to about 35%. That's a solid number for somebody his size. And shooting at that position is more valuable than it's ever been. And and Reno can provide it. That seems clear at this point.
All right, so the Nets, 4 picks there. As you look at the whole haul in the first round, we'll see if they stick with all 4 of those picks or make some trades. It's in their building at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Let's go to the Boston Celtics at number 28, and it's Rozier Fleming. Think this is one of those rare guys who didn't get shorter at the combine, may have actually gotten a little bit taller. The measurements were great. What do you think?
The measurements were great, and we were already excited about the physical profile because he is incredibly long. He's a very good athlete. He's one of the prospects who checks a couple of boxes that rarely overlap: defensive versatility, high-level athleticism, and offensive floor spacing. So that is a recipe that is going to give you an opportunity to play immediate minutes. And let's face facts, the Boston Celtics have some very difficult off-season decisions ahead of them. They are expected to have to trade one, if not multiple, of their core players. They may be looking for different prospects who can come in and play immediate rotation minutes at the end of the first round. Fleming can hopefully fill that role because he does fit the prototype of a very nice two-way role player.
Boston's issues are relative when you compare it to the next team up on the board at 29, the Phoenix Suns, who are really trying to figure things out. They've got a new head coach, they got a new GM. And Gary, this is quite a ways down the draft board for the most outstanding player in the Final Four, but you've got Walter Clayton Jr. going there.
So you wondered where he was going. We were going to get to him eventually. 29th to the Suns. Listen, what he did in the NCAA tournament is all-time great stuff. 22.3 points, shot 43.5% from three-point range, took the Gators to a national championship, and undeniably improved his NBA draft stock. But the things people were saying about him before the tournament are still true. He's still undersized. He's still a below-average defender. And though he is a brilliant shot maker, he can sometimes get a little bit out of control. That would be why I'm a little lower on him than others. We've done this before with prospects, particularly little guards who get hot in the NCAA tournament, and we fall in love with them. Shabazz Napier comes to mind, and that one didn't work out so well. I'm not predicting that for Walter Clayton, but if you want to know why some are skeptical, it's because even if 29 is low for him in this moment, almost nobody would have had him in the top 30 before that NCAA tournament started, even though we had seen him by then play a whole bunch of games.
Almost nobody except for this guy. Because I had him 24 in that first week of the tournament. Because I'm going to tell you this. People have questions about the defense. People have questions about whether or not he can play the point guard. What you shouldn't question is that he is an elite shooter who can provide floor spacing. And if he buys into the defense, which I believe he will, he's a functional NBA player. I don't think he will slip this far. But again, there's reasonable minds can disagree.
And then at 30, it's a guy that could be influenced a little bit by someone who was in last season's national championship game, Zach Edey. So many question marks about Edey, and he comes out, he's a top 10 pick, and he's really good. He's on the all-rookie team. Ryan Kalkbrenner here is the pick from Gary Fink. Do you think his game, his defensive prowess, the fact that he's an old-school big, but can Edey help him here?
Well, he's a giant like Edey. And if you look at NBA roster construction right now, basically all 30 teams in the NBA want at least one guy on the roster like this because Kalkbrenner is an absolute monster in drop coverage. He's not going to have versatility with the way he defends pick and roll. But I will tell you this. He moves his feet better than people expect. You can go back and watch that Marquette game. He actually switched on to Cam Jones and did it pretty effectively. He made strides with his shooting, and he played in one of the more sophisticated offensive playbooks there is in college basketball. So he's not going to have any difficulty transitioning to NBA schemes. And again, he's got a clear and tangible role. It's not going to be more than a backup big. It's not going to be more than a role player. But there are 30 of him in the league, and I believe he's one of the 30 best drop coverage bigs in the world today.
And he is the 30th overall pick in Gary Parrish's mock draft here as we move closer to the 2-week mark. Take a look at 25 through 30. You can find the entire article and explanations for each pick at CBSSports.com, and you can also find mock drafts from some of our other analysts as well. When we come back, Gary and Finkelstein will give us their takeaways from the latest mock. Back live on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight. I'm Chris Hassel with Gary Parrish and Adam Finkelstein. We just went through Gary Parrish's latest NBA mock draft. Obviously, Cooper Flagg went number 1. A couple other things that stood out to me. Ace Bailey fell to the Utah Jazz at number 5. There were no international players until number 19. And Gary, 3 Duke players in your top 8.
Yeah, obviously starting with Cooper Flagg. So everybody's going to have 1 Duke player in the top 1, and then we see where it goes from there. But I think we're going to look back at this Duke team as these men develop into NBA players, and sort of the way you look at 2010 Kentucky and go, they had John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Eric Bledsoe, and couldn't get it done. Or 2015 Kentucky, you got all those players, Devin Booker, Karl Anthony Towns, couldn't get it done. This Duke team is probably going to fall in that category. The answer to why couldn't they get it done is, man, they ran into an awesome team in Houston, and that Final Four was loaded with awesome teams. But Duke was the best, according to all of the advanced metrics, and this mock draft suggests they had the talent to do it all and just came up a little short.
And while, Chris, your point is right, we don't have a non-college basketball player until number 19. Kamen Malawach is the first of 3 international players who went to college basketball in the lottery. I think that is a trend we are going to continue to see as NIL and the house settlement. That doesn't have a prayer working long term. But nonetheless, as we continue to pay these players to play, players are going to come to college basketball before they go to the NBA. The trend was there this year. I think it's going to continue. I will also end with this. There are 2 international players who I think are going to rise. They've done so in the coming weeks. Keep an eye on Nolan Traore and Noah Essengay.
All right, well, let's talk Carter Bryant, because he seems to be rising as well. You guys both loved this pick that Gary had. Carter Bryant out of Arizona going top 10, number 10 to the Houston Rockets. Gary, why do you like this so much?
This has been one of my bigger risers since the end of the season, and among the reasons is because when you have conversations with anybody who works in the NBA, they tell you over and over again how important wings who can shut down elite perimeter scorers, or at least make things hard for them. You can never have too many of them. We are watching these NBA finals unfold, and I know Carter Bryant might only, quote, be a role player going forward, but great role players can help you win championships. And of the young prospects in this draft, I think he's got the best shot to be that, to be what Mikal Bridges has been in the NBA, to be somebody that you might not want to spend a top 10 pick on coming out of college, but once they establish themselves as that great role player in the NBA, you'll give up 5 first-round picks to get them on your team. I'm not promising you Carter Bryant's going to be that. I'm promising you, though, that he's got a real shot to be that.
What I will tell you guys is NBA scouts want us to stop mocking him this high because they think he's better than the rest of the world does. Trust me, GP has got this one right.
All right, guys, we're closing in on it now. 16 days until the draft. It's 2 weeks from Wednesday, at least the first round of the draft. If you want to hear more on the settlement and how that might affect college basketball and even international prospects, check out the very latest Eye on College Basketball podcast with Gary and Matt Norlander, which dropped today. Our thanks to Adam Finkelstein as well. I'm Chris Hassel. Thanks for watching HQ Spotlight.